Nashville SC open Geodis Park. Real Madrid come back in the Champions League, and let's face it, the Seattle Sounders win the most important Champions League for the first time ever in MLS history. Welcome into another episode of Speedway Soccer. I am Ben Wright, joined tonight by Jonathan Slape and Chris Ivy. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. I mean, I think you failed to mention the most important Champions League team in there, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, doing well. A little sleep deprived after watching that Seattle match last night, but at least it wasn't disappointment at the end, as it far too often has been.
Yeah, I tried really hard to stay awake for the trophy lift and fell asleep and woke up about an hour later. But no, that we'll get into that here in a second. I think the big news that we got to talk about is, Geodis Park is finally open. After 6 years of a process, Nashville finally have their own home stadium. We were all at the match. Chris, I'll toss it to you first. Just what was your initial reaction of the match and in the stadium?
Yeah, so I mean, it was mind blowing. So for I think a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of media, they've gotten the chance to go into the park before opening day, whether it be the open training session or different events that they had. For me, from Knoxville, obviously I can't make those kind of midweek events. So it was my first time, and I'm kind of glad it worked out that way, because you walk in and even just all the people who were obviously excited for the match, they've all been eagerly waiting this day as well. And then when you walk into the seating area, I was immediately taken back by just the noise. That the venue traps in noise like no other place at least that I've ever been. And it was evident from minute one. So it was a great experience and great for it to finally be open after all these years.
Yes, we'll keep getting into this for a bit, but Slape, just what's kind of your big picture initial takeaway?
Yeah, so I had not been able to go into the stadium because I'd missed a few of the events due to some work stuff. But so Thursday night, I had was actually in the area, went by and got to walk around the stadium, with it lit up and peer in to the stadium. So that was, but it was really my first chance to walk in, and it is just, it's pretty awe-inspiring once you get in there and realize, like, I mean, it looks fairly big on the outside, but then once you get in there where, they've kind of dug everything in, it's pretty incredible to see just how big it is, how on top of the field everything feels. And I can't even imagine what that must feel like for the players that are on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think all through the construction process, I just remember being shocked by how big it was. And it felt exponentially bigger once it was full of fans. Yeah, I think just initial reaction, it's just cool to see something like this in Nashville. I mean, I think, Slape, you and I go all the way back to those Metro Council meetings. I mean, it's where kind of this podcast essentially started. And even back then, I mean, we knew the stadium was coming, but it just feels so much more tangible now. And I think it turned out at least better than I really expected it would. I mean, I think the stadium fits in with the neighborhood. I mean, I know we've talked about how they've been intentional with that, but it doesn't feel like it's out of place. It feels like you can see all the choices that went into the design. I think it works. I think there are going to be some issues and some growing pains just as the area around it develops, as fans get used to it. But I think that's kind of natural with any new stadium. I mean, I'll throw it to you first here, Chris. But just kind of pros cons of the first day. And I mean, like I just said, I think there's some growing pains and people getting used to it. But what did you think went well, and what do you think needs to be worked out?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just kind of take everyone through my experience that day. So I was one of, I guess, the lucky ones who had a parking pass. So getting in to lot one was super easy. The lot one is the place to be. The canopy overhangs that they have at the fairgrounds create one of the coolest tailgating vibes that you'll find around. I mean, I love tailgating for college football games and so forth. And the one downside usually with tailgating is you bake in the sun and it's miserable in a sense, but it was a perfect setup over there. Going up the hill and getting in, obviously, I think has been said by quite a few people, the concourses were busy, and despite them being quite wide compared to most MLS stadiums. I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal going forward. I think everybody was kind of just walking around, taking it all in, getting in the park earlier than they probably will for any future match. As far as, I mean, obviously we've all talked about or discussed the food options are awesome, something to take advantage of in the future. And then as we're flashing up on the screen now, the park is massive. It feels different than a lot of other MLS venues that you'll see, and it's just bigger. It's bigger. It's nicer. It's certainly a step up from anything we've seen in this league so far.
Yeah, Slape. Initial pros cons here.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of go through my day too, because I think it's interesting that Chris and I both came into the park from complete opposite ends, and spent the day at complete opposite ends. So I don't normally have a parking pass, but I was able to snag one mainly because my mother-in-law came with us for this game. But parked over in lot 5. It's pretty easy. Like, I was one of the early people in, so it's pretty easy to get in and out. I know that there were some issues as far as people getting out after the game, just because there was not anyone there directing traffic. But you may say, Chris, you said that lot 1 coolest tailgating vibe. I would argue that tailgating on the racetrack, it may take the cake there, because it was pretty incredible. To be able to be on that racetrack and tailgate, and we had a pretty big crowd over there, some great food, and then I mean, I think it was a great experience as a whole. Like you said, Chris, concourses were pretty packed. I know I got into the stadium earlier than I probably ever will and ever have for an NSC game. I get in a little bit more than an hour early. I mean, I think probably one of my biggest, not necessarily complaints, but things that will get better is the fact that I had wanted to make my way over to lot 1. But however, just because of some of the construction of where they're building in some of the 10 acres of mixed use, some of that is closed off at the moment. So it's a little hard to get over from 1 to 8. But by and large, I think it was a great day. And the fact that it's only going to get better. We know that, as people get used to the area, as people get used to parking and just get used to all the logistics. And the other thing, the people working there getting used to everything. Because there was one instance where I heard someone ask, hey, where is this? And they're like, I have no idea. This is my first day here as well. So I think, like I said, I think it's only going to get better. I think it's going to be, it was a fantastic experience on Tuesday. I mean, on Saturday or Sunday. I can't even get my days right. It's been that busy of a weekend, but I think it's going to get better. I think it's just as there are more events there, especially you see a lot of times with other events where they have some smaller things to kind of get everybody used to it. I mean, I know they had an open training and they had the team store opening, but like a concert or something like that there. But it really, I think it's just only going to get better.
So let's get into a little bit, of the actual game. And I mean, we'll talk about what happened on the field, but I mean, just the atmosphere around the game was absolutely incredible. I mean, I think you said something pretty similar, Chris. I've been to plenty of stadiums, not just soccer stadiums, NFL, hockey, all over the place. And I can't think of one that was louder for the entire game than that was on Sunday. The press box doesn't actually have windows that open, so you miss a lot of that. Fortunately, Nashville had some overflow media seating right underneath the Transcard Terrace, so it was right next to the supporter section. I went over there. A couple other guys came over as well. Tom Bogert actually came over, and on his way over, he made a really good point that I thought was pretty interesting. He said that typically when he goes around to other MLS games, he notices just plenty of European and international team jerseys mixed in, and he was surprised just that everyone was there wearing Nashville jerseys. I mean, I maybe saw a handful of European jerseys, but it felt like by and large people weren't there just to support soccer in general. They were there and bought in and supporting Nashville, which I thought was pretty cool. What did you guys make of just that the atmosphere in the stadium during the match?
Yeah, I was gonna say to that the European jersey thing. We saw that pretty frequently last year at Nissan, but definitely there was less of that this year. I will say so. I know Chris sits in the back line, but I was, sitting 137 with Davey, next to Andy in the fridge over in the club section.
Shout out the fridge.
But even the noise over there was pretty incredible. And I thought going into this that, I've been in a lot of MLS stadiums. Usually the supporter section is very loud and you can hear it, really well. And I was really surprised that I couldn't hear it as well. And I thought it would be louder, but that's not a knock on the supporter section. It was how much louder the rest of the stadium was. I mean, they still weren't as loud as the supporter section and everyone over there in the back line. But I mean, it was really, really loud over where we were as well.
Yeah, Chris, what did you make of the atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned this in my article Monday, Tuesday, whatever day it was. But I mean, coming on the heels of having gone to England just a couple of weeks ago and going to Old Trafford, going to CBS Arena, which is Coventry, those are storied venues in England, and they are certainly loud in their own right. But pound for pound, Geodis was louder to me. The atmosphere was better. Everybody was standing. I mean, yeah, part of that is probably that it's the first match and everyone's excited. But I kind of said this as well, of just the architecture of Geodis just keeps sounding no matter where you're standing. It's one thing to have a roof. It's another thing where, the noise is just trapped in by the seats and how that pitch is. So it certainly sounded loud in the back line. It certainly sounded from everything we've heard elsewhere in the stadium. And it wasn't even just, when the match was already going and everybody was in full voice. I mean, it was noticeable even in kind of the build up to the match where not everyone's, chanting in unison or anything else. It was kind of that baseline decibel of noise is just louder than anything I can ever remember. And so that was really cool and really unique.
I think part of it too, I mean, that was one of the better starts we've seen from Nashville. They came home. They've been talking about how they wanted to play more attacking soccer, be more proactive. And going up against, I think we could probably all agree, one of the best teams, if not the best team in MLS right now. Nashville really dominated the opening 30 minutes. Dax McCarty hit the post after 5 minutes. Alex Muil forced Andre Blake into a couple saves, one of which hit the bar. One was from absolute point blank range. I still don't know how Blake saved it. Dan Lovitz came close. Hani Mukhtar had another save, another forced save in there. I mean, I think it was as attacking a start to a match as we've seen from Nashville, certainly this season, and definitely. I mean, I think maybe throughout MLS. And I think apart from Andre Blake, they would have gone up 3 goals in the first half and taken all 3 points. But Andre Blake put in maybe the best goalkeeping performance I've seen in person, like hands down. What did you guys make of Nashville's start and just how they stepped up to their first match at home?
First, I have a complaint.
Okay.
And that complaint is directed at MLS as a whole. Did you have to schedule someone so good for the first game of the season? Like, so I had some friends in town. I had some friends in town from Philadelphia for the game. Also, shout out to the Philadelphia Union fans who came. They were down in their the away section fan is down where we're at, and they made a lot of noise in that. But like, I was telling them, I was like, why couldn't we get someone like, I don't know, like Vancouver, Miami, like. My biggest complaint is we knew this was San Jose. Like, we knew when this stadium was opening and we knew the date, but like, come on, like, can you throw us a little bit of a break and not give us, I mean, one of the best teams in the league to open up the stadium. But I mean, I think going back to what you said though, as far as, I mean, I thought the performance was, it was a shame to not convert one of those goals in the first 30 minutes. They were attacking down the end of the field that I was sitting. And they really were able to create chances. They were also doing a good job that first 30 minutes of limiting opportunities from this Union team. And definitely playing a much more attacking style that we've seen. And it goes to show, sometimes you can roll out this, a similar lineup of players, same formation, and just a few tweaks in the tactics give you the opportunity to really get a little bit more on the front foot there.
Yeah, Chris, what did you make of kind of their approach to the game overall?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great approach and super unlucky not to bag at least one of those goals. I think the Alex Muyl should have been tap in that Andre Blake somehow managed to save. I mean, that was, I think, registered at like a 0.6 XG, which is almost to the point of what you would assign a penalty kick. I mean, it was that good of a chance, and somehow Blake keeps that out. So super unlucky. But that first 10, 15 minutes was just golden. Certainly on the front foot. I think the players were certainly feeding off the crowd and the energy that they were providing. And I guess, kudos to Philadelphia for weathering that storm. After that, the match really kind of evened out. And it was much more of a back and forth affair, and the type of match that Philly wants to play on the road. I mean, they're not one to ever want possession, and they're never going to have high possession numbers. But Nashville did a good job. I mean, should have had a goal early, but at least managed, even when they conceded one, to find a way back and had a couple other opportunities to have potentially won it late.
And so after that start, I mean, I think we've seen this from Nashville several times in the past. They have periods where they're on top and creating chances, and they have a couple good opportunities to go ahead, don't capitalize on that, and then let the other team back in. And I think after the break, Philadelphia came out, and it was a completely different game. They looked more composed on the ball. They were able to get in behind Nashville a little bit more, and they ended up taking the lead. Bad giveaway from Hani Mukhtar, and probably some subpar defending from Walker Zimmerman. He was beaten for pace. But then had a chance to recover, and I think he overcommitted a little bit. So Philadelphia took the lead, and at that point, I was thinking it was just going to be the worst possible start to Geodis Park. What did you guys make of that opening goal for Philadelphia?
I mean, it was a little frustrating to see, it being something a little almost self-inflicted, because it came right from a giveaway. I mean, I feel like Philadelphia had started to create a few more chances, and then just to follow that up with giving the ball, turning the ball over, and then allowing Mikel Ulre to get his first goal for the Union. And I think it was coming at a period where I felt Nashville was struggling a little bit. They had kind of begun to cede a little bit more of the possession, and really would have liked to have seen a substitution a bit earlier than we did. I just felt that the game state and the flow of the game was, it just needed to be freshened up a little bit. And I feel like maybe if we would have done that a little bit early, there could have been we may have avoided that.
Yeah, Chris, I know we've talked a little bit about substitutions and Nashville's options on the bench. You know what? Actually, let's hold off on that until after we finish this recap. Philadelphia scores towards the end of the game with about 7 minutes left. Nashville gets a penalty called on Jose Martinez for a handball, and I think it was interesting. We've seen Hani Mukhtar struggle from the penalty spot for Nashville, and I think even going back before he came to Nashville. And after the match, Gary Smith told media that Hani Mukhtar came to him earlier in the week and said that he needs to work on his approach to penalty kicks, and wanted to wait until he's had more time to work on that to take penalty kicks again. So in his absence, Randall Leal stepped up and converted pretty emphatically. I mean, Andre Blake guessed the right way, but Leal just smacked the crap out of the ball. And I think it was a pretty confident take from him. 2 minutes later, there's another handball on Philadelphia. It went to VAR and was not given. To me, it seemed like it would have been a little bit harsh. I think also this may be just naive on my part, but I think winning a game on 2 penalty calls for handballs within a couple minutes felt kind of like a cheap way to get 3 points. I'm sure Nashville would have taken it, and I'm sure the crowd would have taken it. But overall, I think the draw was a fair result. I know we talk a lot about good draws and bad draws. You want to win at home. Drawing on the road feels a little bit more acceptable, but against a team like Philadelphia, I don't have too many complaints with a point. What do you guys just make of the result overall, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, so Normally, I would say it's not a bad result. You want to win your home games, but you can drop a few and have draws at home, and it's okay against really good teams like Philadelphia. The difference being is that with it being the home opener in a new park, I think you've got to take advantage of that atmosphere and get all 3 points, not just from a sporting aspect and climbing the table, but just there were new people and new eyeballs in Nashville that day that there may not have another chance to get after. And I think everyone who was there would have had a great time, but certainly would have left the park with a better feeling and a more exuberance had they got all three, whether or not it was 2 handball penalties or not. So it's an okay result in a vacuum given the circumstances. I would have liked to see all three.
Slape, what's your
Yeah,
take?
I was gonna say, can it be both a good draw and a bad draw?
Sure.
From an aspect of, I agree with Chris. You have a lot of people in that stadium who, have our season ticket holders, or maybe have come for the first time. They wanted to be there because we know one thing about Nashville, and it's that people in Nashville love the bright new shiny thing. And it would have been great for those people, those people specifically that came for the bright new shiny, to get to experience a win. But on the same time, you're playing the best team in the Eastern Conference, a team that has played very, very well to start the season. They limit opportunities. They're also a team that Nashville has matched up with very well, in the past year. So at the same point, like I think it works. Nashville did also get a little bit lucky. I think that Alex Moyle challenge could have easily been a red card. So at the end of the day, I think it's a fair result. I think I've had a few like just niggles or things that I complain about. I kind of hated that the first goal that Nashville scored was a penalty. I wanted that organic explosion, of fandom and organic explosion of energy. And while it was a huge reaction when Leal put that penalty away, it just wasn't to the level. And we haven't seen Geodis Park really go nuts until we see a goal from open play.
Like a 5th-minute left-footed volley screamer from Dax McCarty. That would.
Oh, I mean,
that would have been the perfect.
We may
way
have
to
we may have burned the place down. Like, I mean, let's be honest. Like, it may have been like, all right, that's just it. Like, we're done. But yeah, no.
I think that the biggest shame for me. I mean, obviously they had a lot of good opportunities, but I mean, they had the chances they had in the first half weren't just decent chances. They had 3 or 4 in there that would have just been absolute perfect goals. I mean, Dax's shot off the post. Lovett's had one with his right foot off a corner just before halftime through traffic that somehow Blake got across and saved. And then that turn from Alex Moyle just at the top of the box that somehow Blake tipped onto the bar. I mean, all 3 of those I think would have been just really fun goals to kick off a new stadium with. I think they have an opportunity against a Salt Lake team who looked really good at the start of the season and now looks pretty bad to get 3 points. What do you think this is a game where a draw at home is enough, or are we all kind of thinking that it has to be 3 points against Salt Lake?
It has to be 3 points. I mean, the fact there's some new players coming to the mix for Salt Lake, but I mean, I think that you have to get the win. Like, that we're at the point now, like, yeah, the best team in the East, we'll let that slide, but you have to get a result here, and it has to be a win.
Yeah, it's got to be a win. And Salt Lake has struggled to score goals away from Rio Tinto. I think Krylak is still out right now with an injury, though they just brought back Jefferson Severino. I don't think he's going to be available at least to start, and maybe he makes a quick little appearance off the bench, but nothing to affect the whole match. It's one that Nashville needs to win. You can give up a draw or 2 at home when you're playing, those top 4 teams in each conference, that level of team. Salt Lake can be a sneaky good team, but they're not one of those teams. This is a 3-pointer for Nashville.
Salt Lake are currently in 5th place in the Western Conference with 16 points. They've played 10 games, so they're a game ahead of most teams in the conference. But if you look at their last 5 games, they beat the Galaxy at home 1-0 their last time out. But other than that, they drew to Portland 0-0. They lost 1-0 to Northern Colorado Hailstorm in the U.S. Open Cup. Before that, they lost 6-0 to New York City in what was just an absolute shellacking, and then a 2-2 draw against a Toronto side that no one knows if they're good or bad. So pretty mixed results in recent weeks for Salt Lake. And I think when Nashville played them last time, we all were surprised and thought, okay, maybe this is a really good team. And I think that argument is less airtight at this point. Chris, you and I have been talking a little bit about Nashville and their attacking options off the bench and how Gary Smith adjusts in game. I know you're working on some stuff about that, but do you want to kind of just give your elevator pitch for that idea?
Yeah, so today I kind of ignored work for a little bit and just got interested in pulling data of, how often does Gary Smith compared to other MLS managers make substitutions, and when do those substitutions come? Because at least for me, it felt like during this year, Gary was kind of hesitant to use his bench, was late using it. It's something Slape said, at the time that Philly scored their goal, that it really felt like Nashville needed to mix something up and inject a little new life into the lineup at that point, maybe to, prevent what ended up being that Philadelphia goal. So I went through all the numbers. So out of everyone in MLS this year, in terms of when those substitutions come in the game, the median timing for Nashville subs this year has been the 80th minute mark, which is the latest of any MLS team this year. So when we are using substitutions, they're not getting as much time on the field to make an impact. And for the most part, when Gary has made substitutions, it's like for like replacements that don't necessarily, change the reflection of the game. Now, I will say at least once Philadelphia scored their goal in this one, I was pleasantly surprised to see the move that Gary made. I did not see him dropping Leal back into the deeper lying central midfield. It's just not something we've really seen before. And it certainly gave Nashville a lot of attacking options. And we saw plenty of chances created from that because you had that 3 line of Sapong, Loba, and Mukhtar all running on the back shoulders of Philadelphia's defenders and causing some real chaos for them. So the thing I'm working on is just kind of detailing, Gary's substitution patterns this year and how they have been fewer and later than compared to most teams in MLS.
Chris, sorry, Slape, go ahead here.
No. Continue the thought, and I'll jump in after that.
Just as far as other options, I mean, we know that we've talked about Ake Loba a ton, and I think it's a related discussion, but it's also a little bit separate. Other than Loba, do you feel like Nashville have the attacking players to not just bring off the bench, but to give them a different look? Because I feel like you said, it's been a lot of like-for-like substitutions. We haven't really seen huge tactical shifts in game. They haven't really changed formation based on how the game state is, how the scoreline is, all that stuff. Do you think they have players who can come in game and change things up for them?
I think it's kind of an open question. I mean, I think Loba has the talent certainly to do it. Outside of him, we don't know. I mean, we haven't really seen it. There was a lot of, positive talk about Henwala Bwana this preseason and that he was kind of taking a step up. But as long as Gary kind of sees Loba as that kind of 10 role behind Hani and Bwana in that kind of same role, if we keep going with these like-for-like substitutions, I don't know that he necessarily sees the field, though I would like to if you're chasing a game and need to throw out some options out there that can maybe create something. In the little bit that we saw of him last year at the start of the season, he certainly has some dribbling ability and created some opportunities in the minutes that he had. But other than that, I'm really not sure. I think that's one thing that Nashville needs to address this summer. It doesn't need to be a big signing or anything like that, But I think somebody who can come off the bench, provide a spark, score, a goal or two, and just be a different wrinkle when things aren't going to plan. I think that's something this team really could benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, when you look at the bench, they have guys like Buana, Loba, and even Ethan Zubak. But other than Loba, I mean, Zubak played 1 minute, and we haven't seen Buana yet this season. So, I mean, they're not being used a ton. And then the rest of the guys who are getting used are guys like Brian Anunga, Luke Hawkinson, Taylor Washington, all of whom I think are excellent players, great depth pieces, and I think they've shown well when they've been on the field. But they're all, I think we could all probably agree that they're more defensive-minded players, or at least not the kind of players that you want to bring on a game to bring like an attacking spark, to use a Gary Smith phrase, when you're chasing a goal. Slape, what's your take on this?
I'm probably going to be a bit more negative on this one.
Oh, here's a shocker. No one saw this coming.
No one saw this coming. No one at all. I mean, Chris, you say Nashville needs to bring in another piece in the summer that can bring in and potentially score goals. But I mean, we don't know if they're going to play. We've brought in a guy like Ethan Zubak, who I think, and what we've seen while he is at when he's at LA, can be a target forward, but can also play on the back shoulder. And we've yet to see him play. Like, CJ Sapong has not had his best, start to the season. He's being asked to do a lot and is not getting, I feel like, the break that he probably needs. But he's, the only other person that we've seen get a run out is Teal Bunbury. And my biggest thing, and same thing that Davey has talked about, is Teal Bunbury's not a target striker. If Gary Smith wants to play with a target striker on the field, I mean, Teal Bunbury's not your guy. We know that, Ake Loba's not that guy. Ethan Zubak, I think, could be that guy. He can play with it back to his goal. He does like to play on the back shoulder, but he provides a little bit of a different option. And I mean, I think like the Handwalla Buana situation is almost him, much like Pinheiro was brought in when I think Nashville saw the need for wingers. But when you're playing a formation like the 3-4-2-1, 3-4-3, whatever you want to call it, you don't really have that option for wide attackers. I think that if Shaq Moore does come to fruition, I think Shaq Moore is going to provide another wrinkle, and we may see a little bit more of a need from a target striker when you have, two fullbacks on that side who are able to whip in those types of crosses. But I mean, I think the attacking, the forward position for this team is still just a massive question mark, and will continue to be.
I joked with Ben the other day that, Andy Carroll is available on a free. That's a Gary Smith special right there. Just lobbing balls to him.
Some Ian
I would have loved.
Too.
I mean, I would have loved the Giassi Zardes move. I mean, because they've signed Walker Zimmerman to a DP deal, that they don't have an open designated player slot. But I mean, I think a Giassi Zardes type player would be, fantastic in this system.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about the moves they made in the offseason. I mean, I think we all agree that Jandre Cadiz wasn't probably worth the DP spot that he took up. And I think we're also probably all a little bit curious about Daniel Rios leaving. Maybe more in hindsight than we were when the move actually happened, just because now with everything, with Bunbury not just being injured, but kind of his struggles to play as a target forward, I think we all feel, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't necessarily want to speak for you guys, but I certainly feel that Rios would have been a valuable player to have on the squad right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think he would have been a valuable player. I mean, even like we've let him go, but like, I mean, the Andre Shinashiki deal that just went through, I mean, I think that as well is another instance of a player that Nashville could have got out and really made use of. I mean, I think if there was a way to have kept Jandre Cadiz without the DP tag, I mean, I think he would have been a great player to have, especially through those first 8 road games and at home, because he I mean, as much as people love to criticize him, he provides some physicality, and I mean, he was pretty quick for his size as well.
And I think the one thing I would say on that, just we've seen Mike Jacobs especially do really well with domestic trades, and he's made some smart pickups in season. I know the transfer window the MLS trade window just ended, but it's really not long until it opens back up. And we've seen them kind of take a slow build approach. Will they take a couple months to kind of assess their needs? So I would be really surprised if they go through the next MLS trade window without kind of addressing this. And I guess I'm just saying we've seen them address needs before, so I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt.
I'm just a little more worried because the forward position has been such an issue for so long, that I mean, I think they have shown they can address those needs.
Right.
But it just that just is a little more concerning because it's something that we're, in year 3 still trying to figure out.
I mean, and I think the ideal scenario is that Ake Loba starts getting more minutes. He keeps showing the form that he showed against Philadelphia, which I think was maybe his best showing aside from that 6-3 win in Cincinnati. And if he can get into form at home, which we've all kind of been hoping happens, I mean, that might be the answer to the question.
Yeah, no, definitely.
All right. I guess we should wrap up the Salt Lake portion of the discussion. Do you guys have any predictions, or let's say things you want to see from the match, and then a prediction? I'll toss it to you first, Chris.
Yeah, I want to see an open play goal. I want to see Geodis go crazy, and to me, I think this is a 2-0, 3-0 type of win. Salt Lake struggles to score goals on the road. Nashville should have no problem stopping their attack. I don't want to see any set piece goals leaked through. So that's one thing that at least for me, I'm going to keep watching for the next couple of months just to see if they finally have got this figured out. But this should be a easy win, and if not, there should be some questions asked.
Slape.
I'm going to go, of course, open play goal, but I'm going to go Ake Loba goal. I'm putting that out into the universe. And I'm going to go with a 3-1 win. 3-1 win with an Ake Loba goal.
Yeah, I picked 3-1 in Philadelphia. I think I was a little bit optimistic about the stadium bump. I'm going to push back and say that I was just a little bit premature, and say they beat Salt Lake 3-1. I would love to see. I don't think it'll happen from the start, but I'd love to see more of the Randall Leal in midfield experiment. I thought he looked really good. I mean, part of it was game state with Nashville pushing for a goal, but I mean, I think it makes sense just with his profile. He does a really good job for Nashville in a lot of different phases, but I think deeper, he's an underrated passer, and I think it could give them more of an aggressive look in midfield and maybe open up a space for Ake Loba. I don't think it'll happen from the start, but I'd like to see them use him there a little bit more. Okay, Slape, your team is in the Champions League final. It looked a little bit shaky against Villarreal for a little bit, and then they just pulled off and kind of blew them out of the water. How are you feeling about Liverpool right now?
I mean, so it's we have about less than a month in the.
By the way, Chris and I are just gonna leave right now. We're United fans.
because you said we're in the Champions League final, but we're also in the FA Cup final. We've won the League Cup. We're a point behind Manchester City.
I already regret asking you this question.
So right now, things are good. The Champions League was going into that game, going into the Ceramica against Villarreal. It was always going to be tough. Easily the worst half of soccer I have seen from Liverpool all season long, and probably seen from them. Maybe even worse than some of the times when we did not have a single center back playing. It was a terrible performance. But yeah, they came out in the second half, and really, Luis Diaz is going to go down as one of the greatest January transfers and the impact he's had on this team. The ability to allow them to rotate has been phenomenal. So really excited. Just want to give a big thanks to Tottenham Hotspur for negotiating the transfer fee for us. Because if those who don't know, we were waiting to purchase him in the summer, but then Spurs negotiated a lower fee than what we were going to pay. And then so we walked in and said, all right, let's go. But yeah, no, feeling good. Regardless of, and I've said this, I think I said it online a couple times, like regardless of how the season ends, it is an instance where, as a fan, you never think you'll ever be in this position. You'll probably never be in this position again of having 4 trophies up for grabs. But I'm just going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy the last month of the season, and it's going to be great.
And then on the other side of the bracket, Real Madrid looked like they were dead in the water against Manchester City with just a couple minutes to go, and then out of nowhere scored 2 goals in a minute. Chris, was that the greatest comeback you have ever seen?
Well, as a United fan, no, because the '99 Champions League final to win a treble.
I was 6 when that happened.
The greatest comeback.
I can't speak to that.
I mean, there was also the 4-0 at Anfield.
Yeah. No, but I mean, honestly, it's up there. It's one of those great comebacks that people will talk about for generations to come, so long as Madrid wins the next one. I think if they don't beat Liverpool, it's gone and forgotten in less than a year. But it was certainly great to see at the time. I certainly take pleasure seeing City knocked out and again failing to reach the pinnacle of the Champions League. So that was nice to see. But the Madrid team they're firing on all cylinders. They're going to be a tough out. Well, it's going to be a fascinating match with Liverpool. That's for sure.
Yeah, actually, this evening was the Football Writer Awards, and after Liverpool advanced, post game Mo Salah said he wants to see Madrid, and then this evening at the Football Writer Association Awards, he was asked again about it, and he was just asked point blank, "Is this a revenge tour?" And he just emphatically said yes. So I'm very much looking forward to the opportunity to play Real Madrid, and at the same time avoid Manchester City getting the chance to earn the legitimacy that they so desperately crave. I'm excited for the Champions League final.
I mean, I don't want City or Liverpool to be in it, but I'm just glad that it's not 2 English teams. Really, I think the great thing about the Champions League is seeing teams who normally wouldn't play each other going up against each other. And to me, it's always a little bit anticlimactic when it's a matchup that you can watch during the regular season. So I'm glad that you're seeing a bit of a different look. I don't want Liverpool to win it. I'm not a Madrid fan by any stretch of the imagination, but it has been really fun just seeing guys like Benzema continue to play well, and Luka Modric. I mean, I think he's going to go down as one of the greatest midfielders of all time, and he's running around there at 36, looking like he's still in his early 20s. So I think this is, to me at least, this is the best matchup that we could have had in the Champions League final.
And it's a rematch of the 81 final in Paris. So, it's always like I like. I mean, of course,
I was
I'm
negative
biased.
12 when that happened.
I'm biased to the fact of, like, of course, I want to see Liverpool win or Liverpool be in the final, but it's always good when you get these, these big historic European matchups.
Right. I mean, and regardless of what you think of either team, I mean, these are 2 of the biggest teams in the history of the game. So, I mean, there's a lot going into it. We'll have a lot more preview of it because that doesn't happen until, I believe, the May 28th. So about 3 weeks until that.
Shout out Nashville being on the road that game, so I don't have to that weekend. So it's just perfect.
Speaking of Champions League, Seattle Sounders won the most prestigious Champions League in the world last night, becoming the first MLS team ever. After tying 2-2 in Pumas, they came back to Seattle in front of almost 70,000 fans and just ran away with it and won 3-0. And I think one of the best performances we've seen from an MLS team, period. Chris, initial reactions to the win and I mean, just what do you think this means for MLS in general?
I mean, to me, it's massive to finally get over that hump. I mean, I kind of put it out there, and something I've kind of said for several years now, that the next step in what I'll call MLS 4.0 is competing with Liga MX, standing toe-to-toe with them, gaining respect of the millions of people who tune in for their matches in the U.S., for Liga MX matches in the US every single weekend. If MLS wants to grow, if MLS wants to have better squads based on more revenue, getting a part of that television market to start tuning in and watching some matches will be massive for the league. So getting over that hump finally for MLS, and kudos to Seattle for doing it. I think that's a big step for the league, and all the more important going into next year with the revamped Leagues Cup taking a whole month out of the season in August for an entire competition between the two leagues. I think it was really important to establish some legitimacy to that tournament, and Seattle winning this one, I think, certainly helps. And with that too, I mean, it's a little delayed now, but we still have an outstanding TV rights deal that's out there. And one of the pieces of that has been these type of competitions, including Leagues Cup, that has, expressed interest and reportedly been kind of one of the bigger money draws for the rights deals. So having a legitimate competition that either side could win is something, TV execs will pay attention to.
Shout out Maximo, Nashville.
Yeah, shout out
winning CONCACAF Champions League once they sort out their striker situation.
Yeah, shout out Marshall. No, so I mean, it's great to see an MLS team win this iteration of the tournament, but I don't know how much it says about the growth of the league, more of just the increase in the salary cap. So if we go back to the 2011 final, RSL versus Monterrey. So RSL's salary bill is about 3.3 million. This and Monterrey's was about 8.9 million. And then if we look at this year, Seattle, you spent, all these numbers are approximate, but about 9.1 million versus Pumas's, 8.2. So it's showing that, you spend the most money. At the end of the day, you a lot of times are the team that wins. I think my kind of holistic thought on this is I think it does at time further codify some of the messed up roster and salary mechanisms within this league. If I'm a big fan of, if you want to get real nerdy, go listen to Allocation Disorder with Sam Stasical and Paul Tenorio. This has been one of the big things from both Sam and Paul of, the DP mechanism really creates a very top-heavy roster and does not allow you to really kind of spread out and have, consistent depth all across. And so I think that right now we're just going to see, MLS got over the hump, and it's going to be kind of see, our roster rules are perfectly fine. There's no need for any change, where I still think there is. If MLS wants to consistently be beating Liga MX teams, there has to be some changes to the roster rules and the salary cap.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree and disagree. I agree that the roster rules, I think, are holding MLS back as a whole. And that's a whole. I mean, we could go a full hour on that. I'm a big proponent of just, if teams want to spend, let them spend. If you don't spend, I think the league shouldn't hold everyone else back because of that. I do think, though, it does kind of lend some credence to the argument I think a lot of people have been making, that part of the reason MLS has struggled in this competition is just because they were being outspent by Liga MX teams. And I know it's not perfect and there's still a lot of issues, but I think you are seeing teams slowly be allowed to spend more and more, albeit top heavy. But I think now that they've opened that up a little bit more, I think you're seeing results on the field. I also think it kind of is just perfect. I mean, that it was Seattle who won it and the way that they won it. I think we've seen plenty of other teams make it to the final. But I think over the past decade, Seattle's been the best team and most consistent team in MLS. I think they've been kind of setting the standard for the rest of the league, and just the way that they won it. They didn't win it just playing defense, putting 11 men behind the ball, bunkering and countering. I mean, they went out there with 70,000 fans, which, by the way, on its own is incredible. But in front of an absolutely packed crowd, they went out there. They played the same way that they do every week against MLS, and really just kind of play them off the park. I mean, they played open and attractive and fun soccer and just kind of played their game. And I think it was just for me cool to see a team. This is going to sound like so idealistic, but not like see a team win it without compromising their identity, if that makes sense. I think it was just fun to see Seattle be Seattle and that be good enough to win the Champions League.
And losing two players early on.
I mean, two of their best players.
Two of their best players. I mean, I was just heartbroken to see Nuhu come off so early, but yeah.
Fortunately for Nuhu, it seems like that's a pretty minor injury. João Paulo sounds like it's potentially an ACL tear.
I saw right before we got on air, they're saying it looks like he's done for the season.
Man, yeah.
And that kind of brings up one last quick point. I mean, to me, certainly the increased spending, the TAM era helps. You have more competitive rosters that way. I think last night was a big reflection of the academies and the spending on academies. And I think that's been one of the big growth spots for MLS and why they've now been able to overcome the hump is you have a 16-year-old kid who has been in Seattle's academy who's ready to step up in that type of moment. So to me, it's not just, oh, hey, we're bringing in good foreign players on TAM deals. It's, oh, we're growing our own now. And they've had the type of training throughout, their childhood and their development that they can step up in these situations. And so to me, that's the big marker of this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, to circle back to Obed Vargas, I mean, even 5 years ago, it would have been absolutely insane to say you could bring in a 16-year-old kid for a DP midfielder who was in the MVP conversation last year. And I mean, sure, he struggled at times, and you could tell that it was a huge occasion for him. But I mean, also, he didn't really look out of place, and there wasn't a huge drop-off in Seattle when he came on. A friend texted me during the game. They can't wait to watch him lead Mexico to glory in 2026, which I think we all hope does not happen. You got to cap tie him when you can. But I mean, yeah, to go back to your point, I mean, that's, I think, the real strength of MLS. And I think where the focus in MLS 4.0 has to be, in addition to maybe modernizing some of the roster rules, but the academy system isn't a place where it never has been. We're seeing that already start to pay off with the U.S. national team. And as more and more teams develop guys like Obed Vargas, I mean, you see it in Philadelphia, Dallas. That's the model that the rest of MLS has to adopt, like getting in these young players to complement the rest of the spending. And I think that's really, like you said, Chris, what has kind of allowed MLS to finally get over the hump in CCL. All right, guys. Anything else here you want to hit before we get out?
I mean, I do want to keep just talking to make producer Andy mad.
Okay,
He keeps telling us that we need. Let's bring him on.
Think of?
Let's get him get final thoughts. Then we can.
What do y'all want?
There he is.
What's up, y'all? Shout out to the fridge. The fridge is great. We got a big effing fridge.
Yeah. Hey, can you explain to people what the fridge is?
The fridge is basically in the Goalpost Club. There's just probably 3 or 4 fridges, all lined up, and they're all just stocked full of beer, soda, stuff like that, and 6 different kinds of beers. Every time I go up there, every 15 or 20 minutes, it's just always full. You can just go in, grab it every time. It's like a stop and go, but you don't have to worry about cashing out or anything like that. It's wonderful.
Why? Okay. It sounds great. I'm not sure why that's all you've been talking about for the last week.
Because it's great. I just love it. I love it so much.
Andy has gotten a fridge tattoo. That's just what he wants.
Listen.
A coyote on top of her fridge.
No. I said if Nashville SC wins MLS Cup, I will get a tattoo with a coyote reaching into the fridge. You heard it here. It's on air.
It's on air.
So your move, Nashville SC.
He's recording this, so he can also be the one to delete this as well. So
I'm going to wrap this up. Well, I'm going to close this down before Andy has time to delete this. If Nashville SC wins MLS Cup in 2022, you heard it here first. Producer Andy will get a tattoo of a coyote pulling a beer out of a fridge.
That's right. Heard it here first. So there we go.
All right, guys. I think that does it for us tonight. Chris, just really quick, what do you have coming out here in the next week or so at Broadway Sports?
Yeah, so as we kind of touched on, gonna look into the substitution patterns of Gary Smith compared to the rest of MLS, and then after the RSL match, probably closer to Tuesday, since I'll be driving back from Knoxville on Sunday. My typical kind of thoughts on the match, and hopefully this time will be a little bit more soccer focused after the opening of Geodis Park.
Yeah, and Slape, I know you'll have your regular preview out for Salt Lake on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm hoping to publish the first edition of the Power Rankings now that Nashville has had a couple games at home. Unfortunately, New England is just objectively bad, so I think fans are just have to be okay with that.
I think they're gonna have to be okay with that.
Yeah, maybe hear me out. Maybe winning a bunch of games 1-0 for an entire season wasn't sustainable in the long term. I don't know.
I think you got the Rev hate last year, and Weeby's getting the Austin hate this year.
Yeah, but at least Weeby has the GIF to cheer him up.
He does have the GIF to cheer him up.
Pure gold.
That will live long in soccer fans' memory. All right, everybody. For Speedway Soccer, I'm Ben Wright. I've been joined by Jonathan Slape, Chris Ivy, producer Andy, making everything happen. We'll have another episode of the Nashville Soccer Show out on Tuesday after the match, and we'll be back later next week to recap everything. Probably talk more off the cuff, random Coyote and refrigerator related topics. Everybody, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.